All right. Okay. We are live everywhere. Hello, hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about the self-love path and whether or not we should be pursuing the self-love path in the most independent way possible. Like if we should be doing our self-love work by ourselves, for ourselves, with ourselves, and if this path of self-love is meant to turn us into people who are constantly able to be on our own side, who are constantly able to meet all of our own needs, and who are completely self-sufficient in every way, and who, yeah, like literally never need or want or desire anything from anyone else again because we have this internal resource that we can always tap into that is perfect and fulfills us. Okay, so that kind of everything that I just said there is what I think a lot of people hear when they hear about the self-love path. They really think that it's like, okay, if I'm going to do this path right, if I'm really loving myself properly, I'm getting to a place where I don't need anyone. I don't want connection with anyone. I don't need love from anyone else. I always know what my own problems are. I always know how to solve my own problems. And I can always be there for myself. I can always comfort myself. I can always figure my own self out. And it's never anyone else's job to love me or approve of me or show up for me because I need to transcend that and get rid of it. And my answer to that is you're absolutely correct, and that's why I'm shutting down the mystery school and taking down all these videos, and you can just do it by yourself. No, I'm just kidding, right? Because obviously, if the self-love path, the way that I was teaching it anyways, was meant to be a path of complete independence, I wouldn't be doing all of the things that I'm doing to try to support people in finding self-love, right? Like I wouldn't have made the mystery school. I wouldn't do one-on-one coaching. I wouldn't be making all of this material. I would just be saying, okay, well, you need to love yourself and then figure that out. And yeah, so from my vantage point and my perspective, the self-love path is absolutely not about becoming as independent as possible. And there is a lot of complexity and nuance with this self-love path and how we want to navigate it and what we are kind of looking to get out of it and ultimately what it's leading us to, that I felt like I wanted to make a whole video on this because again, it's not simple, it's not black and white, it's not one or the other. We want to become complex enough to be able to hold the paradox of the self-love path. And also, I think that the self-love path is here to help us reimagine what a healthy society can and should look like, and what we can do as individuals to help us move towards that. Okay, so the first things first that I really want to say about the self-love path is this. In my ideal world, in the world that I'm trying to create, no one should have to do this work. I really feel like if we were being raised properly, in the sense of if we were being raised in a way as humans that actually served our humanity, we would be being raised with these self-love skills and also with just love and safety and secure connections in our real reality. I genuinely wish that we lived in a world where this work that I am doing was obsolete because it was just the way that we are. You see what I'm saying? The fact that we have to do this work to learn to get on our own side, the fact that we have to do this work to figure out that our coping and our self-sabotage and our numbing and our scapegoats and our bad habits are just ways that we're trying to protect ourselves and ways that we're trying to keep ourselves safe and ways that we're trying to meet our needs, and that we have to learn what these things are and how to support ourselves in finding new and different ways of getting our same needs met and all this stuff. Like, the fact that we even have to do this tells us that we're living in a pretty disconnected society that is not set up to actually support and foster a healthy psychology for the human being. And it tells us that we don't really understand ourselves very well yet, right? Like, we are still living in a world where we as human beings, generally speaking, still see ourselves as flawed and evil and wrong and bad and broken, and like we have these bad habits and we have these bad things about us that we have to fix, and that we're just like doing it for no reason, right? Like, we still live in a world where the kind of underlying message of the self-help, personal growth, spirituality world is we all arrived in our adulthoods with perfect awareness and perfect capacity and perfect ability to just create an awesome, successful, amazing, balanced life for ourselves. And then we just chose not to. We just did something wrong. We're flawed, we're broken, we're stupid, whatever it is. And we're just choosing to not be successful and to not be safe and to not be happy and to have all these problems because, yeah, like there's just this kind of underlying narrative that we all should be able to just have these perfect lives, and the only reason we aren't is because we are failing ourselves for some random unknown reason, and we just have to like get rid of all that stuff. And that to me is just like pure insanity. That's like completely not being in alignment, not being in awareness of what reality actually is and why we do the things that we do. And therefore, so many of the things that we do to try to fix ourselves and to make our lives better and to improve ourselves actually make things worse, because we go into blame and shame and self-ridicule and trying to force ourselves to be different without any awareness of why we're doing what we're doing, where our habits came from, how this all came to be, and without any awareness of the fact that none of us are just choosing to mess up our lives, that none of us have come with perfect awareness and perfect capacity to have these perfect lives, and we're just messing it up for ourselves. And again, right, like, we can understand why we would want to believe a narrative like that, why we would want to believe that a perfect life is possible and that we can have it whenever we want if we just fix ourselves, right? We of course want to believe that we have the capacity to be happy and to be successful and to have great relationships and to have perfect health and to have all this stuff if we just fix the one thing we have control over, which is ourselves. You see what I'm saying? So the self-help, the personal growth, the spirituality world is really feeding into that kind of childhood perspective we all have that tells us that as long as I fit in and as long as I control my own behavior to the best of my ability, I can create the circumstances where I will be given all the things that I want and all the things that I need in order to be happy and have pleasure. And I will be protected from and saved and rescued from all the things that are hurting me. And it really just comes down to my behavior, because that is what we would have perceived to be reality in our childhoods, right? In our childhoods, our caregivers to us looked like perfect, God-like beings who could give us anything, who could take away any pain. And it looked to us like the only thing that was affecting the way that they either provided for us or didn't provide for us was our behavior. Yes? And then a lot of us, in order to find agency in this life, we really want to believe that the only thing holding ourselves back is ourselves. And the only thing that we're doing that's causing us to not have the life that we want is like a silly mistake or some wrong, bad, flawed part of ourselves that if we just fix or get rid of, we will have a perfect reality. We will have a perfect experience. And this is obviously dramatically oversimplifying life. This is dramatically oversimplifying why we do what we do. This is dramatically oversimplifying why we get the results in life that we get. This is dramatically oversimplifying society and systems and all of the things that we don't have control over in life. Yeah. And it's, like I say, it's dramatically oversimplifying human psychology and where we came from and how we got to where we are and why we do the things that we do. And this is why, for the most part, it doesn't work. This is why when we are on that self-improvement path of self-help and personal growth and spirituality, that's all about just change your behavior, just try harder, just get rid of these parts of yourself, just fix these bad, wrong, broken things about you so that you can have the perfect life that you want. It's just continual effort and continual being on this hamster wheel of trying the new program, trying the new thing, getting a little bit of results, because newbie gains always happen. We feel excited. We feel like it must be working. We feel like this is the thing, and then we fall off, or the results stop happening, or whatever goes on that goes on. We fall back into our old behaviors because of course we do. We didn't change anything to actually change those behaviors. We were just white knuckling our way into doing something different. It doesn't work. We go back to our old ways. We don't know why we did it. We shame ourselves. We blame ourselves. We tell ourselves we suck. We try again over and over and over again. And then we do this for years and years and years and years and years. And eventually we look back and think like, holy shit, I've been doing this self-help, spirituality, personal growth work for the last 10 years. And I don't feel like I'm in any different place than I was 10 years ago. I keep having progress going back, having progress going back, having progress going back, and feeling like there must be something wrong with me, that I can't stick with it, that I can't make it a permanent change, when really at the end of the day, it's the program that's failing you. It's the teaching that's failing you. It's not you that's failing. It's that this is not how change happens, because that is not why. Right? You being broken, you being terrible, you not being good enough isn't why you have pain in your life. That isn't the root of our pain. And therefore, the more we try to fix a root that doesn't exist, the less we're ever going to find actual healing. Okay? And the other thing is that we are raised in a world where it is advantageous to the people who are running our society to have us hate ourselves. And we need to be really clear about that, that the people who are running our systems of consumption and production and who are making it so that we have access to or don't have access to the goods and services we need to have safety, very much profit off of the fact that we hate ourselves, and off of the fact that we constantly feel insecure, that we constantly feel like we're not good enough, that we constantly feel like we're not safe and we're not going to get our needs met, that we constantly feel like we're alone and we're independent and we don't have real connection to any real people. This is actually how goods and services are sold to us, because they are sold as the antidote to all the pain and the shame and the guilt and the turmoil that we are feeling living in this society where we all hate ourselves and where we're all disconnected. Yeah? The goods and services that we are sold to us based on the idea that if you have these things, if you participate in the trends, if you're doing what everyone else is doing, if you're looking how everyone else is looking, if you're acting how everyone else is acting, if you're buying all the things that everyone else is buying, you're going to be accepted, and then you're going to be loved, and then you're going to feel safe, and you're going to feel good about yourself. Because this is our fundamental program. Remember, all of us got the program in our early childhoods that love and approval equals safety. Because remember, right, when our caregivers, who were responsible to literally do everything for us, we had no ability as children to understand what we wanted, what we needed, how to get our wants and needs met, why we had pain, why we had pleasure, what was going to work for us, what didn't work for us, how the world worked in any ways. We didn't have any of that awareness. All we had was our caregivers either understanding, empathing, and providing for us, or not understanding, not empathing, and not providing for us. Those were our two choices. We either had a secure connection with our caregivers or we didn't have a secure connection with our caregivers. And not having that secure connection with our caregivers, number one, was an existential crisis to us in all ways at all times. Because again, in our perception, we depended on these people for absolutely everything. So to have them pull away, to have them be angry with us, to have them have any kind of emotional or physical distance from us was going to feel like we were going to die, because this was our source of everything. Yes? And then all of us developed a psychology as we grew up that the reason my caregivers are either providing for me or not providing for me, the reason my caregivers are either on my side or are antagonistic to me, is not because of them. Is not because sometimes they don't have the capacity to give us what we want or what we need. It's not because they didn't understand. It's not because they're humans who aren't perfect. It's not because they are messed up or they are traumatized or they are unfairly judging or whatever us. We could not recognize any of those realities. All we understood was that if caregivers are not providing for us, it's because I'm doing something wrong. I'm not fitting in. I'm not doing the right things. I am doing something wrong on some level. And that, again, is an existential crisis because these people are the providers for everything that I need. So again, that first program that all of us got is that when I'm being loved, when I'm being accepted, I'm safe. Because that's what makes caregivers provide for me. And when I'm being rejected, when I'm being disconnected from the people around me, I am very, very unsafe because I can't provide my own needs. I can't figure out what I want. I don't know any of these things. I'm dependent on these people to do it for me. So we all still have that nervous system program because, again, that program was happening before we even really had cognition. So eventually we created stories about, okay, it's this thing that's wrong with me, and it's this that I can't do, and I have to be this way, and I can't be that way, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what isn't acceptable. And we started making stories, and some of them were true, and some of them were not. Yes? Stories about why our caregivers were rejecting us, who and what we had to be in order to be good enough, and this quest for being good enough was really a quest for secure connection that should have provided secure provision of all the things that gave us pleasure and getting rid of all the things that made us suffer. That was the program and the psychology that we all grew up with. So then as we transitioned into adulthood, most of us didn't fully transition into adulthood, where our bodies and our nervous systems and our brains fully understand that we are no longer dependent upon the care and upon the love and upon the approval of anyone around us in order to be able to be safe and to be okay and to have our needs met and to have pleasure and to get rid of pain, because we are autonomous now. We are adults who have capacity to figure things out on our own. We are adults who have capacity to provide for ourselves on our own. We all still, a lot of the time, feel deeply dependent on the love and approval of those around us in order to feel like we're going to be okay. Because again, that deep nervous system program that tells us that being rejected equals being dead, and that being loved and approved of equals being alive, is still the program most of us are running. Yes? So then when we live in a culture that is constantly set up to make sure we never feel like we're good enough, to make sure we never feel like we're acceptable enough, like we're approvable enough, we are all of a sudden in a state of continual stress, a continual manufactured discontent. And this deep childhood nervous system program is being continually triggered by the fact that trends are constantly changing, by the fact that what is in and what is out and what is acceptable and what is good enough and what is not is constantly changing, by the fact that there's no consensus on what is good and what is bad and what is right and what is wrong and what we have to do in order to be good enough, the fact that, right, everyone has a different opinion, it is incredibly stressful for our nervous systems and our bodies. Okay? Because at least in our caregivers' homes, the rules, generally speaking, for most of us, were pretty consistent. Now, not all of us, right? Some of us had caregivers that were fine with something one day and then totally flying off the handle about it another day, and there was like no consistency, and that was going to be really stressful for our bodies and really stressful for our childhood minds, who were just constantly trying to figure out how to be and what to do so that caregivers would love us and therefore provide for us. Yeah? And then for most of us, we experienced what was a reality where in order to be our real selves, and in order to express our true selves, and in order to like step into our true nature, and even in order to learn things at a age appropriate level, like learning that when we want a toy, we're gonna start by hitting the other kid, like we're gonna start with violence, and then we need to evolve the understanding through empathy and learning to, empathize with another human being, that hitting wasn't the best thing and that it didn't actually feel good to do that, and that sharing actually feels better by having a caregiver help us walk through that growth barrier. We didn't get that. We just got scolded. We got trained that this was good and this is bad, this is right and this is wrong. And sometimes that was explicit, right? Sometimes caregivers said, like, don't do that. That behavior is bad. That behavior is wrong. You can't do that. You can't be that way. Or you have to be this way. You have to do this. And that went against our internal nature. That went against who we really were. That went against where we were on our growth path. And that is when we first started to develop these existential relationships with these parts of ourselves, right? The parts of ourselves that got us rejected, the parts of ourselves that got our caregivers to not care for us, either in real reality, like that was actually happening, or it was our perception that was causing this, started to become these parts of ourselves that we were like, okay, these parts of me are bad. These parts of me are wrong. These parts of me are evil because they separate me from God. Think about that. These parts of me are separating me from my source of absolutely everything. From my source of love, from my source of provision, from my source of safety, comfort, knowledge, wisdom. You can see why we would develop these existential parts, relationship with these parts of ourselves. Yes? And even if it was happening not explicitly, but less explicitly, right? If our caregivers, if it just appeared to us like they were rejecting us for some reason, if it just appeared to us like it was these parts of ourselves that they hated, when really they were just having a bad day, or we were misinterpreting their behavior, or like I say, sometimes caregivers really just couldn't provide for us what we wanted and what we needed. They didn't understand. They didn't have the resources. They loved us. They cared about us, but they didn't have the capacity to give to us what we wanted or what we needed. We were still going to internalize that as being something wrong with us, as being caused by us. Yeah? So then again, we all grow up, and then we grow into the spirituality and the self-help world, where now we're in a society with a whole bunch of different authority figures and teachers and governments and friends and peers and all of these other people who all have, like I said, a completely different view of what is good, what is right, what is wrong. So sometimes in our household, we had to deny ourselves. We had to pretend to be something, but at least there was a consistent set of rules. There was this person we had to be and these adaptations we had to make to stop ourselves from being who we were that got us rejected, to force ourselves to be who we weren't that got us accepted. And that's the first place we started learning coping mechanisms and self-sabotage and addictions. That's what we need to understand. That's where the roots of most of these things come from, is how we were dealing with and coping with the pain of not having our needs met in our childhoods, of getting our needs met in covert ways, the only ways we knew how, in learning how to manipulate the behaviors of ourselves and others to try to get our needs met in unideal situations, and to cope with that pain, right? The numbing, the self-sabotaging, the scapegoating, this is the roots of where those things came from. And then they evolved with us over time. as our view of what we have to do and what we have to be in order to be good and in order to fit in and in order to be right evolved as we grew up, and it became more complex because of more and more people having a say over who and what we have to be in order to be good enough, loved, and accepted and approved of. But we're still operating from that idea that in order to be safe, I have to be approved of. And therefore I have to change myself into whatever it is that the people around me want me to be so that I will be safe. Okay, and then like I said, this is how goods and services are sold to us. It's this constant, this good and this service is going to give you an identity. It's going to give you connection. It's going to give you a position of power and privilege in life. We're sold luxury as being the answer to all of our pain. Because it's again this idea that if you just get yourself to be as appealing and as appeasing to everyone as possible, you will have all of the things that are going to make you feel good in this life. Okay, so that's where the roots of self-hate come from, right? And then we all grow up into our adulthoods where we have these scapegoats, these numbing, these self-sabotaging ways of being, where we don't understand why we have them. We don't understand why we do these things. And it's because, again, at the end of the day, most of us are trying to live a life. Most of us are trying to be a person. Most of us are trying to function in a system that hurts. Okay? The way we operate in our reality, where, number one, most of us never feel fully seen or fully loved or fully accepted by somebody. Because we have been being trained from very early on in our lives to never be our true selves, to never be our authentic self. We have been trained from very, very beginning that there are bad, wrong, shameful parts of ourselves that we have to keep hidden, that we have to be embarrassed about. And therefore, we're never able to let someone fully see us or fully understand us or fully know us because of that deep fear that we will be rejected and shamed and guilted. So we're all in these relationships where we're pretending to be who we think other people are going to like. And so we just constantly feel lonely and we constantly feel misunderstood, and it's constantly reinforced that these other parts of ourselves are bad and wrong and shameful as we are being approved of for who we aren't. And then we wonder why we have such deep loneliness and existential dread and fear and pain. Well, that's a big part of it. And then the second thing is we never learn how to develop lifestyles that actually feel good for us. We never learn how to find work that feels really good for us. We don't learn how to find actual ways of being, like eating or sleeping or resting or moving or any of these things that actually nourish us. Because the system is so set up that you just have to fit yourself in to these 9-to-5 work days, to the hustle and the grind culture, to doing whatever you need to do to fit in these methods of work and these methods of production that are anti-humane. Because remember, our systems of production are anti-humane. The people at the very top make all the money through exploiting the working class. Yes? Paying lower wage than what people deserve, making it so that people are working these 9-to-5 work days, which is way too much time spent at the office. We're overproductive, and then we're constantly, again, sold this idea that the thing that makes us good and the thing that makes us worthy and the thing that will make us worthy of love and therefore safe is our productivity, how hard we're working. And if you don't have the resources and the things that you need and you're not feeling good in your life, it's because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're not productive enough. It's because your work isn't high level enough. We've literally been tricked into believing that it is reasonable for someone to put in a full day's work anywhere and to not then be given a living wage. That is completely unreasonable. And yet we've been sold a bill of goods that because we hate ourselves so much, because we already feel like if something bad is happening to me, it's because of me. I am failing. I'm not good enough. That message is being used against us. Yeah? It's like, yeah, that's exactly it. So if you're working and you're not making a living wage, it's your fault. You're a low-level worker. You deserve to be exploited. That's childhood programming being used as a manipulation tactic. You see? And then we're trained to fight against one another. We're trained to fight against community because in our minds we're being told that there's not enough resource, there's not enough time, there's not enough energy for everyone. And therefore, we all have to compete against one another for the good jobs, for education, for whatever it is that's going to allow us to move up in the world. And everyone else is just going to suffer because they're not trying hard enough. And we are okay with that. And that's completely bonkers because we know that there's enough. And how do we know that there's enough? We have billionaires. We have billionaires. There is absolutely no reason that anyone in a developed country should be going without food, should be going without housing, should be going without healthcare, given the amount of access we have in the Western world. The only reason that is happening is because we've all been manipulated into believing that this hoarding at the top, and then we just need to fight for ourselves, right? We all just think the answer is just get rich. And the rich continue to push that idea that if you just get rich, all of your problems will be solved. And then we think, okay, well, then I don't want collective anything because that's going to hinder my ability to get rich. Because we're not seeing that it's like, no, okay, but if we had collective healthcare, if we had living wages for everybody, if we had, affordable housing, we had all these things that a more socialist society would have, you don't have to get rich to have safety because it's built into society. We're not even seeing why do we want to get rich? We want to get rich because we want to get ourselves out of this manufactured discontent where we literally don't have enough. We don't have safety. We don't have access to the things that give people a reasonable way of life. Or we believe that we don't because we're constantly being told that if we have any sense of not feeling good enough, any existential dread, any going to bed at night feeling disconnected, it's because you don't have enough. You're not good enough. You're not rich enough. You're not successful enough. So keep working for it. Yeah? Whereas if we could understand that the reason that is happening is because we are not working as a collective. That if we worked as a collective, so much of that would be taken away. And then we don't need to be rich. We don't need to fight for ourselves because society is working together. And again, it's not about communism. It's not about all of us becoming the same. It's not about all of our options and all of our freedoms being taken away and everyone just gets the same wage and everyone wears the same clothes and everyone just does the same stuff. It's not about that, right? We have to have enough complexity to be able to understand that we can still have freedom of choice. We can still have people who do certain things more than other people and that there will be variability. There is always going to be inequality in the human race because that's who we are. We're never going to all be equal. But there are certain levels of just basic safety that could exist that don't have to take away from our ability to go beyond just the basic stuff. But it could mean that we don't have to have huge swaths of the population who have less than they need and who literally can't get to a place of enough. And like I said, the way this is all orchestrated is because it's continually playing into our lack of self-love, our lack of self-worth, our feeling like if I am suffering, it is because I don't fit in, it's because I'm not good enough. And then we constantly seek doing and being whatever we think we have to do and we have to be in order to be good enough in society. But in order to be good enough in society, you pretty much have to disconnect from your humanity. You cannot be in a healthy state and be participating in our systems. Yeah? So this self-hate that we all have, this feeling that we are not good enough, this feeling that we are never, ever good enough, that we can never be safe, that we can never show our true selves, that we can never really be who and what we are, that we can't go on our own actual learning growth path because we're going to be mocked, we're going to be rejected, we're going to be misunderstood. This is how the system is perpetuating itself. This is how it is keeping us separated from ourselves, separated from one another, so that we are more and more dependent on the system. Self-love is a radical way of disconnecting from the foundational psychology that is required to keep our systems running the way that they are. If you are someone out there who is really saying you don't like the system, you don't want it to keep being this way, changing our fundamental psychology, how we interact with ourselves and how we interact with one another is the key. Without that, we are constantly just going to be recreating these systems of inequality, of fighting, of feeling not good enough, of trying to figure out who and what is right and who and what is wrong. And it's just going to be cycle after cycle after cycle of a different person being in power, different people being in power, and it not being for the good of everybody. Okay, so what does all this have to do with the self-love path and if we should be doing it on our own? So again, when I first started my self-love journey and I started to realize just how deeply I hated myself and how much all of my scapegoats and self-sabotage and numbing and coping, all of it was me trying to deal with the pain of having been deeply rejected in my childhood, the pain of never being understood for who or what I was, the pain of not being able to fit into normal culture in many ways. My physical body couldn't do it, my psychology couldn't do it, and how many ways in which I was blaming myself and shaming myself and believing that everything that was happening to me was because of me being horrible. When I first started on that path, it was like monumental to see how much I hated myself, to see just how deeply I believed I deserved absolutely nothing, that my existence was a complete waste of space, and that the only good thing about me was trying to make up for the fact that I required resources and time and energy by giving away more than I took. Okay, that's how I started. And coming face to face with the amount of pain I was actually in, right? When I really was like, okay, when I look beyond my coping mechanisms, the ways that I nitpick my body, the ways that I nitpick my behavior in my relationships, the ways that I blame, if I could just fix this about myself, I would be better. Everything would be perfect. If I could just become this needless nun, like that's basically what I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to like go to a monastery and have no needs and just be someone who constantly gave to the community and didn't exist, basically. And I really believed that if I got to that place, all of my pain and struggle would go away because I would finally be loved. Yes? And I realized that learning to be on my own side and learning to love the person that I actually was, the person that everyone else rejected, the person that had very strong opinions that people didn't like, the person that was, like I say, not able to be completely needless and actually had things that I required in order to feel okay. This person who did not have an able body and therefore wasn't able to be as needless and highly functional as everyone wanted me to be. This person that I am, that again was so deeply rejected, I realized that I was going to have to learn to like who I was because it wasn't changing. Right? That first revelation that this is who I am and I can't change it. I can't fundamentally change who I am. I have been trying and trying and trying and I'm not succeeding. So I'm going to have to learn to love me and hope that that helps was, again, a massive revelation. And then as I started on that path, I realized how freaking hard it was. I realized how deep these roots of self-hate and shame and blame and guilt, and just every time I felt pain, which was a lot because I was physically ill and I was neurodiverse and I didn't know those things, and people rejected me a lot. Like I said, it was not in my head. Most people said right to me, I don't like you and I don't like you because of this, and we don't want to hang out with you today. And my caregivers outright didn't like me. And so learning how to be on my own side and to see all that shame, blame, and guilt for what it really was. Learning to see it as my way of trying to change myself so that I would be loved and approved of, so that I would be safe. And realizing that as an adult, that wasn't going to work. That it wouldn't have mattered in my adulthood how much I fit into what my caregivers had wanted me to be. Because as an adult, that was never going to actually work for me. That wasn't going to get my needs met. That wasn't going to make me happy. That wasn't going to make me safe. And in fact, the opposite was true. The more I tried to be what my caregivers wanted me to be, the more I actually made my own life worse, the more I took myself away from what I wanted and away from what I needed, away from what felt good for me. So, right, understanding that as I became an adult, in order to fit in with what my caregivers wanted me to be as a personality, someone who's needless, someone who's giving all the time, someone who is able-bodied and neurotypical, essentially, I was not able then as an adult to be meeting my own needs. Because my needs, my real needs for the real me that actually existed, meant I was neurodiverse and I needed to learn how to figure that out. I was chronically ill and I needed to learn how to figure that out. And I had ways of being that were going to work for me, that were very much in opposition to the ways of being that my caregivers wanted for me. And had I tried to do what they wanted me to do, I would have killed myself. Not that I would have taken my own life, but it would have been not getting my needs met so much that I think it would have been very detrimental to my health. And that was really hard and really scary. Taking all of these chances and doing all of these things that I did. Learning how to have an online business, moving away, leaving my religion, becoming a vegetarian, all of these things that I did that have served me were in complete opposition to what I was trained I needed to do and be in order to be good enough, in order to be loved. And this meant that as I was doing what was right for me, in real reality, I often felt like I was walking off of a plank. I often felt like I was so scared and I was so alone and I was so just not going to be okay. And I had to learn the inner resource of being on my own side and giving myself the benefit of the doubt and learning how to fail and learning how to figure out what my needs actually were on my own, because I wasn't given that by my caregivers, and because in order to do what my nervous system wanted me to do, in order to do what would have felt safe in terms of being what people wanted me to be, I would have been denying my true needs and therefore feeling worse and worse and worse and worse, and then needing coping and numbing and self-sabotaging more and more and more and more to try to cope with the pain of not having my needs met but being what people approved of. So I realized that this was so hard and this psychology was so deep. And my first instinct was holy shit, I never want anyone ever to have to go through this alone the way that I am going through it. Okay, and then the second thing is, again, if we had an actual community mindset as a society, if we lived in a world where we were not being completely manipulated all the time into rejecting one another, into seeing one another as our competition. So This is, again, a huge part of why I even have to do this work that I do. Because we are constantly indoctrinated into this idea that everyone around us is our competition. That there's not enough resource, there's not enough time, there's not enough space. And in order for us to win, in order for us to succeed, we have to be in competition. We have to be in a state where we are fighting against one another to get what we want or what we need, or we look at each other in a way of like, how can you help me? Are you a hindrance or are you a help on my path? And that's how we see each other. And it makes us feel so alone and so isolated and so deeply, again, like we are not deserving of love and we are not deserving of safety and we are not deserving of any of these things. And that we just need to be competing all the time. And this drives our self-hate deeper, which then drives our need to fit in harder. And then we're sold goods and we're sold services and we're sold values and we're sold ways of working that are completely detrimental to our needs, that are completely detrimental to our actual mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health. To be in separation from one another, to be in competition with one another all the time, to be in a constant state of self-rejection and denial because we're trying to fit in, leads us to this place where we are hating ourselves so much. We don't even see it. We're trying to fix ourselves. We don't see it. And then the system perpetuates itself, right? Self-help, spirituality, personal growth, they are billion-dollar industries. Because we all hate ourselves. And we're all told that the reason we hate ourselves is because we suck. And the thing we need to do is to fix our individual selves. Okay. So the self-love path that I teach is the exact opposite of this. It's learning how to have compassion for yourself. It's learning how to have compassion and curiosity for why you do what you do, why you are in pain, why you have your coping mechanisms, your self-sabotage, your scapegoats, why you have your bad habits, why you're attracted to unhealthy relationships, all of these things, so that you can understand where those patterns came from in your childhood of you just trying to fit in. That is where it all came from. It's you doing the best you can to fit in to whatever culture you were raised in, of this is how you have to be and this is what you have to do. And then when we're told by the self-help, spirituality, and personal growth industries that if you're doing things that are harmful to yourself, you just need to stop. And it's because you don't love yourself, and it's because you don't respect yourself, and it's because you just need to fix this thing about you. We're completely missing the point. That is like, no, you're doing it because you love yourself. All of your scapegoat, all your self-sabotage, everything you do that seems bad, wrong, and against yourself is how you know to try to survive. That's why you're doing it. You're trying to get rid of a part of yourself. You're trying to be something you're not. You're coping with the pain of not having your needs met because you're fitting in and you're doing what everyone expects of you. But what is fitting in and what everyone expects of you is completely contrary to what you actually want or need. That's why we suffer in this society, because we get the hit of consensus reality approval by doing what we should do. But it hurts because it's not actually meeting our real needs, right? We can all pretend, like I was saying, I could have become that nun who pretended to have no needs and pretended to have no opinions and just tried to be as loving, like, never saying it how it was for someone for the rest of my life. And I would have been approved of for doing that. But I also would have been dying inside because that's not who I am. And so I would have had pain. And then I would have had ways that I coped with that pain through self-sabotage, numbing, and scapegoating. So for most of us who are working like 9-to-5 jobs that we hate, we're coping with that in some way. We're trying to fit in and do what we can because that deep nervous system program tells us, if I am loved, I will be safe. But doing what gets you loved actually takes you farther away from safety because it's not what you actually need. It's harmful to you. This is what we need to start to understand. So as we go on the self-love path, we start to discover who and what we actually are and what we actually want and what we actually need and what about society doesn't work and what about it does. And this is going to lead to a community mindset every single time. Because we are going to recognize that we are not independent beings, that we don't survive on our own, that competition is not good for us. When we fully get on the self-love path, we're going to realize that being in a state where we can't be our real selves because everyone is afraid to be their real selves, because everyone is afraid of rejection, and because we're all existentially afraid of everyone else's real self, just as much as we're afraid of our own real selves. Okay, this is the key. Self-love helps us recognize that we don't have bad parts of ourselves. That there aren't parts of ourselves that are actually wrong, bad, and evil and the reason we are suffering. That we have parts of ourselves that may be immature, that maybe need to grow, that have needs, that have wants, that have desires that don't fit into culture. But that there is no actual existential part of ourselves that we need to be afraid of. We are all convinced that we have these parts of ourselves, that if I were to be my real self, if I were to truly accept myself, if I were to be real, I would die. Because these parts of ourselves got rejected. You understand this now. But as we come into adulthood, we're going to start to realize, as we do the self-love path, we're going to realize that these parts aren't bad. We don't actually have to be afraid of them. They are not the reason we are suffering. And then we start to be able to see that about everyone else. And then we will start to realize and recognize that it is this validation. When we are seen for who and what we are, when we can see ourselves for who and what we really are, finally through that lens of compassion and curiosity, all these parts of ourselves we've been trained to hate for our entire lives, we can finally see them with love and curiosity. Because this is the foundation of the self-love path. Being able to be your own safe place, which means you can show up and look at all of yourself and have love for that, have compassion for that, make it okay. That is the number one most liberating experience pretty much any of us are ever going to have, to be seen for who we are and to be approved of for it. And most of us are never going to get that from someone outside of ourselves because our world is set up the way that it is, where we all have these existential relationships with all these parts of ourselves that we project onto others. So everyone is being fake. Everyone is pretending to be someone that they aren't. Everyone has judgments of all of these parts of self that they project onto others. So then we never feel fully seen, we never feel fully loved. And that means that we always feel insecure. We always feel unsafe. We always feel like we're not going to be okay, which then leads us to being able to be manipulated into being in competition with one another all the time and to be doing what society tells us we're supposed to do to be good and to be rejecting ourselves and feeding the system. When we learn how to actually love who and what we are. Again, this doesn't mean that we say, I'm going to keep doing all of my harmful things forever and ever and it's just fine. That's not what self-love is. Self-love is showing up for these harmful parts of yourself and finally seeing the innocence behind them. Why you actually do it. How it's helping you cope. How it's helping you survive. And you show up with love and presence. And you get that sense of feeling, oh my God, I'm not evil. I'm not bad. I'm not wrong. I'm not broken. The reason I'm in pain or don't have what I need is not because I'm fundamentally messed up, when we are seen and loved and approved of like that, when we are validated like that, that is what liberates us to be able to say, okay, what do I need? Why am I doing this? What's the real reason? How can I support myself in a new way? How can I find a better way to get my needs met? It's a liberation into adulthood. And then we start to be able to do that for other people. We start to be able to be that safe place for other people to see themselves as whole and complete and good enough. And again, it fosters this sense of growth and this sense of evolution, so we're not just stuck in our patterns forever. Because again, the more we reject ourselves for our patterns, the more we make ourselves feel not good enough, not safe, we stimulate our nervous systems into doing what we've always done. Because when we're scared, our nervous system only wants to do what we've always done. The more we shame, blame, and guilt ourselves and think that that's going to help us change, we're not realizing that shame, blame, and guilt is activating our very first program that tells us when I am rejected, I am not safe. And to understand that we all have evolutionary biology that says when I am not safe, just do what you've always done. So you're going to go back to your habits and you're going to go back to your routines, and then you're going to hate yourself and shame yourself and blame yourself again, and then buy the next self-help book and then go to the next conference and you just need to change. No. You need to love who you are. There needs to be acceptance and approval for all parts so that we can figure out what they need and what they want, and then we can evolve them. And so my point is, the reason I do one-on-one coaching, the reason I have the mystery school, the reason I make these videos is because this work is really hard to do. It's really hard to do, and it's really hard to do on our own. And honestly, I am trying to be the parent that all of us didn't have. These are the foundations we should have been given. There is nothing bad, wrong, shameful, broken about you. There are rules to how the universe works, and there are rules to how society works. And there are certain ways that we need to behave in order to get our needs met. And the more we learn to love and accept who and what we are, the more we can grow the areas that need growth, that are truly existing in a state of harm right now, that need to be evolved. And the more we can accept what is true and real and reject the messages of what we need to do and be to be good enough, that are not in alignment with true health, that are not in alignment with true being. And this will turn you into someone who realizes, like I said, that community is everything. I am trying to provide for you the ability to create a secure connection within yourself, because that is the foundation for a new society. And I wish that you didn't have to do it. I wish that all of us had been given a secure connection outside of ourselves as we grew up that would have taught us how to have this secure connection from within. This is the point. If we had been given a secure connection, we wouldn't have to be doing this work. So it is my hope that eventually I make these videos redundant, because we are all doing this together. And the fact that I am able to pass this on and to keep being a reminder is your sign that no, we're not supposed to do this path all alone. So there is massive benefit in being able to learn to be on your own side, no matter who or what around you is feeling or saying or doing what. That is a skill we do want to develop. That's the internal part. We do need to learn what our own needs are, and what is hurting and what doesn't hurt, and what works and what doesn't work, because we are the only ones who can really figure that out for ourselves. So that's the independent part of the self-love path. And the whole mystery school is all about figuring out how to get on your own side so you can see what you actually want and what you actually need, and what your coping, self-sabotage, numbing, scapegoating behaviors are actually trying to teach you, and how they're trying to help you, and where they came from, and how you can evolve them through loving yourself, not shaming yourself and trying to change yourself. And then the whole third curriculum is about turning that awareness, that self-love, into your community. It's about changing the way you interact with society in general, because as we become deep practitioners of the self-love path, the more we can teach others how to be a secure connection for themselves, and the more we can be a secure connection for others. The more we then will have a community mindset that will make us less susceptible to being manipulated into being hyper-individualistic, which only harms us and harms everyone else and benefits the system. The only people who are truly benefiting from us being in a constant state of competition with one another are the people who are billionaires. Everyone else is suffering. And we start to say, that is not okay. We start to develop true empathy, which leads to true action of how do we make these systems more equitable for everybody. The self-love path should involve community. That's why my mystery school has a group. You're not just doing it by yourself. And again, that's why I said that's why I do one-on-one coaching. Because sometimes we need someone to help us discover how to have that secure connection within ourselves before we can start to do it for ourselves. Some of us were so unsafe, and it's so difficult for us to see the good parts of ourselves or how these parts of ourselves that are harming us are good, that we need support from someone else. So no, this path is not supposed to be a path of individualism. Individualism is what's getting us into the problems in the first place. So yes, you want to be able to love yourself no matter what from the inside. There is an internal part of this path, but it is not the whole thing. The deeper you go on this path, the more it is going to take you into your community. The more you are going to be able to be authentic, the more you are going to be able to be a safe place for others to be authentic, the more we're all going to air our dirty laundry together and realize that it's okay, we can deal with it. The more we're going to say, maybe there isn't something wrong with all of us. Maybe it's the system. What can we change? What can we rebel? How can we work together and start to rely on each other instead of relying on the system so much? Because again, the more independent we are, the more we rely on the system. The more community focused we are, the less we rely on the system. The self-love path should not be making you completely independent. And I am sorry for everyone who has to do this work on their own because you didn't have a secure, safe connection. That's the reality that we're working in. That's, again, why I made the school. That's why I do coaching. That's why I do these videos, because I am aware that not everyone has a safe place to go to, that most people are not hearing this message. And it's very, 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 very difficult to do this work when we're all by ourselves and no one is reminding us, right? I can tell you that from personal experience. Doing this on my own was so hard. And like I said, I never want anyone to ever have to do that. That's why I made the perfect map, in my opinion, in the mystery school of how to walk through this. Because this path is hard and it is confusing and it goes against everything. And I never want anyone to have to do it on their own, ever. That's why I do this work. So no, you don't have to do this path on your own. Please use these resources. Listen to other psychologists and psychiatrists and self-love teachers. Be in community with the people who are doing this work too. Know that you do want to develop these inner resources and these inner access, because there isn't a guarantee that we're always going to be surrounded by people who can love and support us. Like, it's a guarantee that that's not going to be the case. So we need that inner place so that when the external is not able to provide it for ourselves, we're not without it completely. But it should not be making you independent. It should not be making it so that you think you have to be completely independent and have no needs. No, it's about learning what your needs are so you can communicate instead of manipulate. It's about learning what really works for you so you can build a life around that and have it be beneficial for everybody and see that it works for everyone better than what we were doing before. This is so much about community. It's so much about realizing that we are connected and we are so much more the same than we think that we are. And that truly being able to hold space for yourself means that you can start to hold space for others, means we can all start coming out of shame and blame and guilt and actually healing. Because it is that being seen for who and what we really are and being loved and approved of that actually heals. That is my opinion. That unconditional loving presence that we develop in ourselves and that we develop with one another is what heals. It's what gives us the ability to move past our traumas and all of these things because we have that foundation of I'm going to be okay. All right? So I hope that makes sense. We're not supposed to do this on our own. Don't do it on your own. Come join the school. Reach out for coaching. Whatever it is that you feel like you need. You don't have to do it by yourself. I will help you develop these tools that you have the internal resource, right? So you don't become dependent on me. That's my big thing. You become able to do it on your own, able to have your own insights. And I'm just there to be a validation, and I can have a different perspective. And like, that's the other thing, right? Like, we're never going to be completely self-sufficient. We're always going to need each other for a different vantage point or for love and support sometimes or all of that stuff. That's normal. Okay? So this path is nuanced and complex. The more we can create that inner sense of safety, the more we trigger to our nervous systems that we're going to be okay, because that was our first program. And that is where all growth and all insight is going to come from. When we feel safe, that's when the nervous system opens up. When we feel threat, that's when everything shuts down and we can't make change. So the fact that the self-help, spirituality, and personal growth world is constantly triggering us into feeling like shit about ourselves means that growth is off the table first thing. Because that's just how our nervous systems work. The more we feel like we're good enough already, the more we're going to grow. That's the paradox of it. Okay? So when we develop this safety, we grow ourselves, but then we also grow into people who can be more community-minded. And we can go out from just ourselves and our independent little thing, and we can see how we can contribute to the world. That's a huge part of this path. How are you here to help? In whatever ways you can. You're not sacrificing yourself. You're becoming your real self and seeing how that creates a ripple effect. Because it will. Empathy. You will want to give back. You will want to support others in just being a good friend and being a good partner and you see? There's so much here. So no, don't do it on your own. You're not supposed to do it on your own. We're not supposed to be all on our own. It's this individual nature thing that's messed up. So we do this work when we are alone and we don't have someone. And that's why I made the school for everyone out there who doesn't have a secure connection. I teach you how to build one on your own. I wish you didn't have to. And then as you do that, you're going to feel safer and safer and safer. You're going to learn how to communicate better. You're going to learn how to get your needs met better. All of these things ripple out from there. Okay? It changes the world when we do this real work. It's not just about loving yourself and then serving yourself and fuck everyone else. That's not the self-love path. That's the system. The self-love path should be making you more empathetic, not less. Not self-sacrificing, but more community-minded. Okay? Okay. So that's that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go into the mountains now. So that's what I'm doing with my day. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day, week, month, whenever I see you again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being yourself. You are good enough. There is nothing wrong with you. And you belong in a community. You belong in real community. You deserve to be able to be your real self. That's the community I'm trying to create, and I hope that we will continue to create it together in all the different spaces, because there are lots of other people doing this work. You don't have to follow me. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to do any of that. I think there are lots of other people doing this work who are also good. Find something that resonates with you and go with it. Okay? Anyone who is not shaming you is a good place to start. Okay? Okay. Mwah! I love you. Goodbye.